Hello guys, it's me here. I finally think I figured out how to make my own videos, so hopefully this one goes a little bit better than those videos that we had to show from Khan Academy. So today, instead of solving for the missing side links, we're going to be using SOHCAHTOA to find the missing reference angle, or what they call theta. And so what we're going to be doing here is basically the same thing with SOHCAHTOA, except what we're going to be doing is taking their inverse of sine, cosine, and tangent. And that's just really one little thing on the calculator. So it's not too difficult if you got the last part. So what we need to do is make sure that we are using the right trig ratio. So again, if we have a right triangle here, hopefully that's the right triangle, looks pretty good. Again, we're going to have a reference angle, and they call that theta. So that's just like a symbol for it. So if this is our reference angle here, then remember this is going to be our opposite side. Our hypotenuse is always the longest side, or the one opposite of the 90-degree angle. And then this is going to be our adjacent. And then those are going to allow us to use, like we did last time, whether we're using sine of theta, which is equal to our opposite over hypotenuse, whether we use the cosine of theta, which is our adjacent over hypotenuse, or we could use the tangent of theta, which is our opposite over adjacent. Okay, so we're still going to be using these same ratios, that SOHCAHTOA, with our theta, which is our reference angle, and then using the appropriate sides for that ratio. So nothing's really changed. So if we look at an example here, here's what it's going to look like this time. So we are going to have a triangle, and it's a right triangle because that's what we're dealing with. And if I look here, I'm going to be looking for this angle. I don't know what theta is, but I do know that my hypotenuse is going to be 12, and I do know that the adjacent is going to be 8. So if I wanted to find out theta, I still have to figure out what's going to be the ratio being used. And so I have the hypotenuse, and I have the adjacent side. So that tells me I need to use cosine. So I have the cosine of some unknown theta is equal to 8 over 12. Now, this is where things get a little bit different than last week, or last classes, okay? So we have this cosine of an unknown angle. So we need to undo that to figure out what theta is going to be. Well, on your calculator, if you hit the second button, and this is, I'm referencing the TI-84, and then you hit the cosine button, that should give you what we call cosine -1. Okay, and cosine -1 is basically just saying the inverse of cosine. So it's going to undo that cosine for us and figure out what that angle is going to be. So in the calculator, I'll make sure I label that our calculator stuff here, so that way you guys can see that it's a little different. And let's move that a little bit better. Okay, so that's going to be our calculator portion, just so you remember that. And if you just find on your calculator how to get to cosine -1, they all have it. Usually, like I said, it's a second button. It's usually on that second operation on the same cosine button. So what that does is now it's going to be cosine inverse of 8 over 12. And that is going to be equal to our angle theta. And please remember, you need to be in degrees mode. Otherwise, you're going to get a radian. We're not there yet. Very important, degrees mode. So on my calculator, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to hit second cosine 8 divided by 12. And it's going to give me an angle. So in the calculator, this says that my angle is 48.1896. So I'm going to round that to 3 decimal places just because, and I'm going to get 48.190. So that missing angle is actually 48.19 degrees. So again, the steps here are to first identify which sides you have. And that just means, do we have the opposite, do we have adjacent, or do we have hypotenuse? Which of those two? Then we need to choose the appropriate trig ratio. So are we going to be using sine, cosine, or tangent? And then we set up the problem. And the last thing is to calculate theta using the inverse trig function. And again, that is on the calculator. It's that second cosine or whatever trig ratio you're using. So I'm going to do a couple practice problems here. Feel free to pause it when you need to. So if you want to try along with these to see if you get the same answers. And again, as you notice, our triangles are never really always going to be in the same orientation every time. So here's my right triangle. Okay. And we are looking for theta right here. So this is my reference angle of theta I need to find. And the side lengths I have are going to be, let's say 7 and 15. So if I identify that, this is my adjacent side. This is my opposite side. And this is my hypotenuse. So I am going to be using sine because I have the opposite and the hypotenuse. So the sine of theta equals 7 over 15. So I do the inverse of sine of 7 over 15 in the calculator, and that's going to solve for my missing angle of theta. And inverse sine, let me do that real quick, of 7 over 15 is going to be 27.818. So I get 27.818 equals theta, so the answer is 27.818 degrees. Okay, let's do one more. There's my triangle. It's a right triangle. I am looking for my theta here. And I have my opposite side is going to be, say, 10. And I have another side length here of 11. So I'm looking at using the adjacent and the opposite which means I'm using tangent. So tangent of theta equals, remember tangent's opposite over adjacent, equals 10 over 11. So I take the inverse of tangent of 10 over 11, and that gives me theta. So on your calculator, second tangent, 10 divided by 11, and we get 42.274 when it's rounded. Which means our answer is 42.274 degrees. And today's work on GoFormative is really just going to be identifying the angles using the appropriate trig ratio. So again, make sure you're using the inverse, and if you have any questions, feel free to go to that Google Doc on my office hours and type those in. It gives us a nice record for other people to see too. They might have the same question as you. So just type that in with your name, and then I will go through those and start providing examples and things like that if you have those types of questions. And always feel free to email as well. Hopefully this has been helpful. If you guys have anything else that you need, please let me know, and that way we can get that taken care of.